Welcome back to the Rollup High Roller community. As always, nothing on the Rollup is to be construed as financial advice. We are just some educators in the DeFi space. Toss us a quick like, give us a share, a repost, send it to a friend who may want to watch this, and finally, give us a sub or a follow. It means the world to help support credibly neutral educational content in DeFi. We're here to educate, empower, and enrich you, and let's jump in.
Welcome to DeFi by Design, where we talk all things blockchain and cryptocurrency while striving to educate, empower, and enrich.
What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the DeFi by Design podcast. I don't know really what to say other than the last 24 hours have been a bipolar sense of the imagination that we call crypto. We have aged 3 years and 3 days, and we are lucky to be talking today with the co-founder of Offchain Labs, Steven Goldfeder, and an active community member of the Arbitrum Decentralized DAO. Here with Rob, of course. Rob, GM, you're a STIP maxi. We did the Arbitrum STIP marathon space, covering all the STIP projects. Rob, how you feeling?
Feeling good, man. Happy New Year, Andy. Happy New Year, Steve. This is the first pod that we're doing in 2024. Feels like we're just kind of like getting into the groove now, and what a way to kick it off. So, Steven, welcome to DeFi by Design. We were DeFi Slate, now we're the Rollup, and I think that's a great place to start because on Arbitrum and as an L2 within this Ethereum Rollup centric roadmap, maybe we could start with like essentially how you're doing, and we can get into the vision that you have for Arbitrum within the Ethereum Rollup centric roadmap.
Hey, Happy New Year. Thanks for having me. Super excited to be the guest to kick off 2024. So that's awesome. And congrats to you guys. I've been following your progress and really fantastic. So excited to be here today. Happy to get into it in terms of the Rollup centric roadmap, which you mentioned. This is a super exciting time because we're actually seeing, and we've said this many times, but that's the thing. Like, as you scale, it's more exciting every step you take. So it's not the first time we've seen Ethereum scale, but as we take these additional steps and see new milestones met, new capacities met, it's more and more exciting, and it's a testament to really the strong leadership and vision of Vitalik, who set up this Rollup centric roadmap. In 2020, when there were very few, we were building, but we hadn't launched yet anything. At Offchain Labs, most of the current other players in the Rollup space weren't even building. Some were, but most were not at the time. And it was an extremely early vision, an incredible vision, and it's playing out. It's happening, right? It's really, really working. The rollups are scaling Ethereum, and I am super happy to play a small part of that, and excited to continue building for Ethereum every day.
Awesome. And as most people probably know, you're the leader, founder, CEO of Offchain Labs. And then when it comes to Arbitrum and the DAO, you are like one module essentially within this like larger ecosystem of decentralized community. So could you kind of talk about like the separation? Like, what does Offchain Labs do? Why is that different from what Arbitrum the DAO does? And we can talk about kind of like what is in store for both of those entities going into 2024.
Absolutely. So at Offchain Labs, going back 5.5 years at this point when Offchain Labs was founded, our vision was to scale Ethereum, to build scaling technology for Ethereum. It was early days back then, and this actually was not a new thing. This was on the heels of our academic work at Princeton. So Offchain Labs spun out from Princeton University, and Arbitrum, the academic paper, was published in the summer of 2018. And actually, if you go back on YouTube and search for Arbitrum, once upon a time, I would say, just look for Arbitrum. There's like one video. Now there's like obviously a proliferation of videos. But if you go back for that first video, you'll find a class project at Princeton discussing a very early version of Arbitrum. Predates my involvement. This was a project led by Ed Felton in an undergraduate seminar. That project went on the shelf for some time, and then Ed, Harry, and I, so those are my two co-founders, Ed and Harry, picked this up in an academic context, and we built that out. The paper, the research, the initial research, I should say, was culminated in a paper in 2018. The summer of 2018, that's when the company was founded, and we've been building on this vision to scale Ethereum and to build additional capacity for what we knew and we believed, and what's looking backwards, we were correct on would be the massive increase of demand for Ethereum block space. That was our vision at the time, and we set out to build that, and we built the core Arbitrum technology. But it became clear to us at some point that Arbitrum technology is not something that should be or could be controlled in a centralized manner by any company, be it Offchain Labs, be it any company or any individual, and therefore decentralizing Arbitrum and putting the control of Arbitrum in the hand of the community was important, particularly when you think about a technical point like upgrades. How do you upgrade the software? And that has a lot of different ramifications for security, for just features, and for what the community wants. And that's obviously, it needs to be in the hands of the community. And the Arbitrum DAO and Foundation are the manifestations of the community, where the community can and does have input onto the direction. And that includes both the technical direction of like, hey, what upgrades should the software run? And includes the funding direction, right? Hey, if the DAO has a treasury, what should the DAO spend that on? And those decisions are in the hands of the community. Now, it's no secret that, as part of this, Offchain Labs team holders, were allocated some of the community governance tokens. But we, as a policy at Offchain Labs, do not vote with those tokens. And therefore, we like to really make sure that governance is in the hands of the community outside of us. And we have seen, and happy to get into this more over time, really fantastic and so many voices. I mean, I know we have Arbitrum OG and Stip Maxi here, so you guys probably know better than I do, but so many voices arise in the DAO. It's funny, the DAO is not even a year old, but it's a vibrant and active community, and it's not always a community that agrees. And some people mistake this chaos for something bad, but that's something good. When people are plugged in, they're going to have strong viewpoints and they're going to care, and that's what the DAO is. So yes, I am an Arbitrum community member, but it's important for Arbitrum to be controlled by the community, and also excited for other voices, be them individuals, be them other companies, be them technical builders that will build software and contribute software to the community, be it at the application layer, be it at the core chain layer, all to contribute here as well. And the idea is that this is a community-driven project that's larger than any one team or company. So Offchain Labs has a history, was a launch partner in with the Arbitrum Foundation in creating what exists today. But ultimately, our goal is to more and more empower the community and empower others to build alongside us. We've seen this happen in a really, really strong way over the past many months, but I think there's a ton of potential to, take that even further.
Yeah. And needless to say, number one roll-up on L2B as far as activity, TVL, all of that goes, just crossed $1 billion of DEX volume, I believe, in the last 24 hours. Rob and I are involved in the DAO, seamless grants, people are active, definitely very, very active, right? Which is very, very important for DAOs, because DAOs kind of die off inactivity. But when you have that level of activity that Arbitrum does, makes it easier to grow, and to kind of get things done. And so kind of bring us to that, there's a lot to get done in 2024. From your perspective, kind of from almost an outsider viewing in, right? You've been in the trenches for so long with Offchain Labs, Arbitrum, seeing this all kind of blossom. Now, we're in 2024. The Arbitrum DAO is established, right? We're not going anywhere. Ethereum is scaling. These roll-ups are almost like the original vision of Ethereum sharding, but not in the same way, but in the same sense. We've got all these different roll-ups. We're going to bring them all together through different technologies. And it's happening. So that is done. It's established. But now the cool part is that we kind of get to decide the direction as a community. And so kind of from your shoes and from your perspective, what are the couple things that you'd really like to see from the DAO in 2024, whether it be vision or certain initiatives, kind of what objectives or DAO goals do you personally see or have? Start there.
Yeah, it's a great question, and yeah, it has been definitely a fantastic time for adoption, but there's so much more that one can do. So, I don't like to be particularly too strong in my recommendations, because I really appreciate other voices and want to make sure that other voices rise and we sort of limit. I don't want to sort of have undue influence in any of that. But that being said, I think the DAO has a tremendous role to play in building, obviously, the Arbitrum ecosystem, because that's what it is, but really Ethereum and scaling Ethereum and what that looks like and what the shape of that is and how it can bring new verticals onto Ethereum and give them the security of Ethereum, give them the ability to transact in Web3, which I believe, and I'm sure you believe as well, is fantastically important, revolutionary for many applications, and something that's a massive opportunity. And the DAO has a ton of directional input there into what to do, and that includes both, again, technical direction, where the DAO. So the one thing about Arbitrum, the Arbitrum DAO, which is different than any other L2 DAO that I'm familiar with, is that the governance is actually self-executing. And what I mean by that is, in some DAOs, you'll have governance votes, and then a multi-sig with keys. And the multi-sig are basically supposed to turn the keys when the DAO votes, but those two things aren't actually glued together. It's just sort of an assumption. In the Arbitrum DAO, when you put a proposal on chain, technical proposal, and it says, okay, do this upgrade, it's the vote that actually makes the upgrade happen. If the vote goes through, the upgrade happens. So the DAO is actually significantly in control over real power. The things that I would say that the DAO, very, very broadly, should, the way I would like to, would love to see the DAO view itself is, it is a very well-funded enterprise, and it has the ability to sort of shape this direction of the ecosystem. And it should look for, how do we build this coalition of really strong voices, individuals, could be other, companies, other service providers as well, to, embark on this vision together. Because the whole theme of the DAO is not one company, not one person, but this cacophony of voices that you need in order to have success. And the one thing that Arbitrum DAO has, and I think it's a big step up from others, is it has diverse communities, right? So it's not just Arbitrum, we all agree. It's, well, there's the Treasure community, and there's the GMX community, there's the Camelot community. And, if you just read the DAO forums, you don't have to go back too far to see that they don't always agree on every detail, but they do agree broadly on, they want Arbitrum to succeed. And that's like the really nice thing. When you have different voices that have sort of different perspective of what's important, but all have the same goal, you're not going to get to an easy answer necessarily. There might be some chaos. There might be some, disagreements. There might be some wins and losses, and some things, proceed, some things don't. But that's the engagement, which I think is important. So I think the DAO needs to embrace that engagement. Right? There are some out there that say, "Oh, it's chaotic. It needs to be more centralized." Like, I would disagree. I think, if you look at just to like government, right, different forms of government, democracy is probably the most chaotic. Right? If you have a dictator, it might seem from the outside less chaotic because there's just someone that tells you what to do, and everyone knows that they have to do that, and everyone just walks in stride and falls in line. But if you have real voices that are empowered to direct things, then they're going to speak up. And it's going to look chaotic. It's going to look really messy at times. But I think that's what we're doing, and that's where the importance comes. And the DAO needs to figure out how to channel that and make sure that it makes these right decisions, and also look back at decisions it's made and say, there was like these steps, did they achieve the objectives? How do you iterate in time? You're not going to necessarily get it right the first time, whether you're centralized or decentralized, but you can take input and put that into a feedback cycle. And so then the other thing on terms of other community members and getting other companies and brands to contribute, I think is fantastically important. I think it's something that the DAO should definitely look to get more aligned voices. But these should be companies, and these should be people that are really committed to Arbitrum's success, and really excited to say, I work for the community, and I'm excited to put all my resources into making sure that the community scales. And the last thing I'll say is, and this is something for me personally, but this is something I think that everyone in the Arbitrum community and really in the L2 community more broadly can and should focus on. It's something which I've been trying to do more in the past few weeks, and it's 2024 is one of the things which I am committed to really doing, which is, some of the other ecosystems out there, they point to Ethereum and say, there's all this fighting in Ethereum, like they're hurting themselves, different L2s are warring and hurting themselves. And to some extent, I think that that's incorrect, for the same reason why I think fighting in the DAO is incorrect. Sure, you have other ecosystems that only have one voice, it might sound better and there's less dissent, but it's when people actually care and are committed, that's important, and that's what actually makes this different in the fact that people are committed and care, and there's no way to hide opinions. There's no way to mask that. It just has to come out. On the other hand, though, so that's the one hand. On the other hand, I do think that there is some fairness in the criticism in the following sense, which as L2, builders of layer 2s, it's sometimes easy to get caught up in the small differences, right? So you're totally zoomed in and you're like, your guys are doing everything wrong, everything incorrect, because you're doing this like sort of, technical detail of a proof in this way and not that way. And you can get really, really into these like minor differences, but you fail to zoom out and like, hey, we agree on like 99% of things, right? If you look at like, across the aisle, there are those that don't think that Ethereum should be and is the default smart contract platform. We all agree on this. We all, again, want Ethereum to succeed. So I think zooming out is important and letting people understand that, hey, I'll be the first to criticize another role if they're doing something which I think is bad for Ethereum, but also realize that, hey, we're all in this together and all trying to do the things that are best for Ethereum. And zooming out more, particularly in public, I think is very important. So that's one thing which I personally will be doing in my role at Offchain Labs and my role as a community member. But I think it's important for us as a community to understand that. And the thing that we can do as a community is understand that there's a greater purpose here, right? We're also trying to elevate Ethereum at the same time and not lose track of that, not lose sight of that when we are engaging. It's not all about the super intricate zoomed in details, also the zoomed out details, which is, hey, we're scaling Ethereum, and that itself is super important, and we're doing a really good job at that.
I love the philosophy you have on chaos, because it's like a productive chaos, and it by accepting that chaos is going to happen almost inevitably, you almost like front run it, and then you're able to flip the script and go from chaos to simplicity, which is not the normal course of chaos. It's normally simple into chaos. So by accepting it, realizing it, you're able to flip the script and kind of take care of it and then go in a more beneficial direction, which I think is really, really cool. You mentioned like there's a lot of places, there's 99% of the surface area where these L2s agree with one another. So, and then maybe 1% where not so much agreement. Could you kind of like describe like what are the aspects where people agree or the L2s agree? And then where do you think is some of the areas where L2s might clash?
Absolutely. So I think from a vision perspective, we can get into heated debates on the Ethereum level, on the Arbitrum level about what the best way to do things. But having like the fact that like L2s leaders generally agree with the vision of we want to elevate Ethereum, we want to scale Ethereum, we want to make increase the availability of Ethereum secured block space. That's like a massive agreement. And if you look at over time the way that these debates happen, you often see the scuffle in the moment, but directionally teams tend to also move together, right? So teams, for example, you'll see this around how we approach as a community alternative data availability solutions, or how we approach like hybrid solutions like Arbitrum AnyTrust or Validium. And there's like a lot of consistency, and the debate often like leads in the direction that most people follow in. So there's not just focusing on the debate, but realizing we're also kind of agreeing. Another example is, there were some early debates around optimistic rollup, withdrawal window, how long that should be. Should it be an hour? Should it be a day? Should it be a week? And even teams that are quote unquote warring have been able to come together and say, okay, it looks like we as a community wanted to do a week. Great, that's what we're going to do, and we're going to build the software in that way. So there's a lot that we can just through the debates and through the fights, through the arguments, we come to consensus on. It's sort of a method to consensus. That's number one. Also just the vision, but also in terms of actual technical progress and technical alignment, I think is important as well. So a great example is EIP 4844. This is something which many different teams are contributing to, and we're contributing to on the Ethereum layer. And every line of code that we write, say at Offchain Labs, is going to benefit our competitors at other companies as well, and similar for them. Every line of code that they write towards this goal is going to help us, and there is just shared interest there, and that really again in a very literal sense here, that shared interest is on Ethereum and it's the direction of Ethereum. Hey, how do we make Ethereum the settlement layer that's optimized for rollups? And we can all contribute to that at Offchain Labs. So we talked about our contributions to Arbitrum, but we also haven't talked about that much, or haven't talked about it all here today, is we build Prism software. Prism is the leading consensus client for Ethereum. And we at the L1 development layer are super involved in EIP 4844 and contributing to Ethereum in that way. And I think there are plenty of other ways. EIP 4844 sort of has the community spotlight right now, but there are plenty of other ways that we can contribute as well. Related to EIP 4844, for example, we collaborate with the Ethereum Foundation. We've published a bunch of papers on analyzing these proposals and seeing how they affect the Ethereum community, how they affect roles, just understanding. And also there's just a ton of shared interest when it comes to features that we can all agree on or all make use of, or standards. That's the other thing, which I think it's a little bit early still to talk about standards, because you don't standards and innovation, right? So if you have a standard that you have to fit into and you're trying to build something that's completely new, the standard is just going to sort of get in your way. As the innovation happens more and more and more, and you've built something that's being used, standardization becomes more and more important. So I think we're still probably early on towards the innovation cycle, but I think we're getting closer, and we're starting to see places where standardization can and does make sense. And that's another place which I think we can all agree on, because the alt L1s are not wrong in the fact if we can't ever come together and can't ever agree and can't ever focus on Ethereum and not argue over every small detail, we will end up hurting ourselves. I don't think that we've done that. I think that there's an amount of fighting that's good and an amount of fighting that's helpful to getting that direction, but I think we have to have a dual purpose. So those are some technical answers, I guess, of where we can do that, but also just support each other. That's just the social layer as well. Just say, okay, I'm going to understand and really internalize this and try to support other projects and realize that they are doing, they're set out to do something that's noble, and they agree with me on what I'm doing. I might disagree with how they're doing it, but still be able to recognize that we're largely on the same team.
Yep, definitely. And that's the Ethereum ethos. And I think Arbitrum's very aligned amongst others. I remember ECC last year, Harry was on a panel with 3 ZK EVM builders. Alex from ZK Sync, Jordy from Polygon, and Dan from Tycho. And they were in a heated debate with regards to ZK versus Optimistic. And they all started ganging up on Harry, saying that Arbitrum has no choice but to be a ZK rollup in the future. And Harry's just sitting back there. And of course, this is like 7 months ago. So, these ZK rollups hardly had even launched or had any TVL or any users or anything. And Harry's just kind of sitting there giggling, like, guys, like, look at our chain, like, look at our activity. Like, he didn't even have a response, right? Because there's no reason to one up anybody. There's no reason to kind of attack other people's solutions, but in a friendly way, and for the sake of innovation. And I thought that was very outstanding in the sense with regards to, sure, perhaps we can agree that ZK technology is extremely powerful. And you could even agree that it is more futuristic than an optimistic technology, or you could say no. But having the open mind and being able to just kind of agree to disagree, but also have that similar, traction with Ethereum is super important. Kind of coming back to the DAO conversation a bit with regards to this chaos that Rob has mentioned. One of the big drama points for Arbitrum in the last couple of months was this big bankless DAO thing. As well as some of these other large proposals for ARB tokens. Some passed, some did not. I know you have some thoughts on these, so maybe I'll frame it to you as kind of, where do you draw the line between greed or excessive asks from DAOs and wanting to actually wholeheartedly be a part and attract as many service providers, quality minds, and people as possible to a DAO?
It's a great question. So I don't have any specific comments on, I didn't have any involvement there. The only comment I'll say is that sounds like there was some misunderstood identities in that whole thing as well. And, I've known in terms of the Bankless HQ side, I've known Ryan and David for a long time and only have, a lot of respect and positive things to say about them. And I seems like they got sort of embroiled into something larger than that. But I think, generally back on the theme, which I said before, is I think it's important for any DAO really to take its job seriously and realize that these resources are real resources, right? And that's number one. And even though it's in a decentralized and a virtual setting, they're like real resources, and they are people that you should. I think alignment is the most important thing, which is how do we create alignment and shared vision and shared purpose and shared mission? And again, confusing alignment with agreement are like completely like it's an easy thing to do, but it's not the case at all. Like we might be aligned in vision, but have radically different views of how to get there. And in fact, that's a good thing, because if we don't, we're probably not really aligned, because I probably just am not paying attention, just going to agree with whatever you say. If I actually care and I'm really aligned and deeply committed to a vision, I probably won't agree with you on every step on how to get there. So understanding the process of reaching consensus with disagreement, I think is important, but also just focusing on that alignment, which is there are teams out there that might see the DAO as an opportunity. And by the way, I'm not talking about the bankless situation at all. I really, to be clear, I'm talking about like how the DAO should think about this in the future. There definitely are teams out there that might see DAOs or exploit the lack of centralization in a DAO setting. It could be in any DAO where they'll say, hey, I could just get money from a DAO for doing some services, then I can go to the next DAO and get money for doing some services, and they might sort of exploit that nature. So I think what the role of any DAO, I think, is to understand that it's it has a real sense of purpose, and should have the same anti-conflict and alignment values that you'd want when, for example, in a centralized organization hiring an employee or hiring a service provider, which is are you committed to the mission? Are you committed to the vision? We should find someone who's, really excited not just to provide services and get paid. Obviously, that's important, and everyone wants to get paid for their services, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But is super excited about the mission and plugged in, and is actually in full agreement and wants to make this particular DAO, whether it's the Arbitrum DAO or some other DAO, a smashing success. So I think the Arbitrum DAO in the ecosystem is fortunate to have a lot of different candidates and players that are very excited about what they're doing and could definitely play that role. But that's what I think is very important, is just finding the people that are excited about taking this to the next level. That could be application developers, that could be other service providers, that could be chain developers, whether those that write core software for the chain, or those that actually want to launch their own chain. There are so many different roles, and it can be non-technical roles as well. There are so many different roles in the ecosystem that need to be filled, and I think finding aligned voices for those roles is really going to be critical for the success of any DAO.
Yep. And yeah, I equally was not trying to pick on any specific thing. Just it's interesting when you have a decentralized organization, how to make decisions and filter, and it's all new, right? And the Arbitrum DAO has done a good job of kind of appointing people in a way which are legitimate, have had tenures with Arbitrum, different types of things, and it's very interesting. So I think most would say that Arbitrum is the DeFi hub of L2s. Like, hard to disagree with that. So Arbitrum has the dominant, like, there's just no way around it. Like, I mean, unless you guys have an objection. But yeah, go ahead, Steven, before I ask.
No objection. Sorry.
no objections. Right. So dominant DeFi hub. I mean, one could even argue across all of crypto in terms of the dApps, the experience, the yields, the opportunities, the builders. It's quite dominant. But there might be some places where you think that Arbitrum isn't so dominant, whether it's events or whether it's NFTs or SocialFi or RWAs or I don't know, different languages or community. What are some of the areas that you are particularly interested in seeing Arbitrum flourish outside of DeFi in 2024, which perhaps aren't weak now, but maybe could use some more development to further strengthen the kind of position of Arbitrum as well as the entire ecosystem of Ethereum?
Yeah, that's a great question. So number one is I would definitely agree that Arbitrum has a core strength in DeFi. And one of the nice things about DeFi, and one of the things that I think brought DeFi to prominence, a couple of years ago, was the fact that you can have these sort of synchronous interactions with applications. There's a deep network effect that has there, whether it's because of the other applications that are live or because of the liquidity that's there. And I think we're increasingly seeing innovation in DeFi happening there, right? So it's not just, hey, okay, I can launch a DEX here, another DEX here, another lending protocol here. It's how can I combine these different pieces in ways that no one else has and tap into protocol A, B, and C, and by doing so, build protocol D that's new and unique and different and differentiated. That's incredible to see. That's what I love to see, and we see a ton of that innovation on Ethereum and on Arbitrum, right? As one and separately as well. That's what's always made Ethereum different to me, which is it's the mind share and the innovation, and there's so much new and exciting things, and it's less copycat projects, but more like deeply innovative projects, which I think are excited there. There are other verticals which Arbitrum I think is also very successful. One is gaming. Arbitrum Nova is really, really successful in gaming. It has lots of high-profile games. Doesn't always get the in a very financialized world where lots of metrics are financialized, like gaming doesn't always get its fair level of recognition because often those aren't the metrics that they're tracking. And I think lots of the times their benefit, right? If you want to be, in 2017, maybe that was what gaming was focusing on, but today, like you have real gaming studios that are building, like, priority number one, good game. Number two, crypto experience for those who want it, right? That's the correct, in my opinion, viewpoint that games should have. But like the idea is that therefore they might just not get their recognition because they don't have the TVL numbers that others do, but they do have the transaction numbers. And I think anyway, it's also a little bit earlier in terms of the gaming life cycle and the DeFi life cycle, but that's a place where Arbitrum Nova is very strong, both in terms and also into the Arbitrum ecosystem. For example, Xi, XAI, their launch is happening soon, and they've seen fantastic success on testnet, and also a team of core builders that are just really plugged into the ecosystem and to gaming, and know how to build a good experience. And we're seeing others as well. On Nova, for example, you have plenty of the proof of play team is doing just record numbers and really exciting, innovative things when it comes to fully on-chain gaming. And I can go on, but I'll sort of stop there. But there's always more to be built there. And gaming, like I said earlier, is earlier in its life cycle. So I don't think that's any chain is necessarily one gaming or at this point. I think there's a lot of exciting signals, but it's earlier on. Other verticals that you mentioned, real world assets, that's an exciting one for me, but also really early on. Arbitrum has some early successes there. Franklin Templeton expanded to Arbitrum recently. Centrifuge launched an Arbitrum, and there are lots of others as well that are either launched or in development. And that's another place where I think DeFi is going to be helpful, because today, like TradFi and DeFi, even on-chain RWAs are sort of segregated, but a lot of builders that I talk to have a dream of merging those and making experiences that are DeFi-like, either connect payments or other DeFi functionalities into TradFi. Because just taking your TradFi, existing positions and moving the bookkeeping on chain, it might actually help for costs and efficiency, but it's not the most exciting thing to do. Really figuring out is how can we take this technology and take the users and give the users new powers and new capabilities is the most exciting. When you do that, number one is who's the audience? It's probably a lot of the people that have been doing DeFi, but number two also is there's just, ways to tap it. People are interested, or builders are looking, are there ways to tap into those markets? So I think Arbitrum's role in DeFi is going to be very important there, but there are also others doing important experiments. So Kinto is a institutionalized chain launching in the Arbitrum ecosystem, just focused on institutions. And sometimes they have different needs. For example, KYC is one of them, where they might just have different KYC requirements and not be able to tap there. So they're tap into DeFi. Sometimes they will, sometimes they won't be, but there are different ways to sort of experiment here. And we're seeing a lot of that in the Arbitrum ecosystem. When it comes to, to say where do I think that, one place the Arbitrum ecosystem is has some room to catch up. SocialFi is one of the other ones you mentioned, and definitely, I think we're seeing some exciting and engaged projects that are working and building really interesting things. But that's not, I would say, Arbitrum's core strength right now. That doesn't mean it can't be. I think that there's exciting possibilities there, and those that are looking to build the ecosystem should think about that, which is, okay, how do we incentivize builders to build more here? How do we what functionalities, be it technical, be it something else, can we provide that makes this ecosystem more attractive for that? Because ultimately, I view Arbitrum as a very general purpose technology, and even the public Arbitrum chains are, for the most part, general purpose. And you can have a ton of different applications and innovations using this technology. Some Arbitrum is leading on today. Some it has really early signs of progress, and some.
I think there's the other one that is super exciting for Rob and I, which we've been paying attention to, is the Orbit, Arbitrum Orbit, launching app chains and launching kind of playing into the whole modular narrative. Right, Arbitrum Orbit just integrated Celestia. They're going to integrate alternative DA layers for their L3s, basically launching chains on top of Arbitrum L2, right? Which then Arbitrum L2 almost becomes like a settlement layer, right? Which then elevates Arbitrum to a whole different level. It's not just a rollup for Ethereum; it's like also a settlement layer itself. I'm curious what your thoughts are on the modular thesis, on Orbit, on these kind of app chain L3s. Where do you see this playing out with Arbitrum?
One thing that I think we at Offchain Labs, when we talk about the technology, don't do quite as well as some others is we tend to wait to talk about things until they're built and they exist and you can use them. And we often don't play the narrative game as much as maybe we should. I'm not saying sort of patting ourselves on the back for that, right? It might be a good thing, it might be a bad thing, I'm not sure. And Arbitrum, when it comes to, there's a lot of different views and visions of how these different modular pieces come together. But the cool thing about the Arbitrum ecosystem is that there actually is a modular stack that people are innovating on today. So as you mentioned, Celestia integrated their alternative DA, their data availability layer into the Arbitrum Orbit stack. Near actually announced something similar last week. They're doing. Others I know that we're working with are doing this as well. When it comes to shared sequencing, Espresso Systems is building integrations for both the time boost protocol, which is an ordering protocol that can, for MEV capture, but also building just generally their shared sequencer capabilities for Orbit chains that want to opt into it. And the list goes on. And actually, if you look back, and I'm relatively sure that either the first or certainly one of the first alternative DAs to go live was actually in the Arbitrum ecosystem on Arbitrum Nova back, in the summer of 22, where Nova went live with the AnyTrust technology, which uses alternative DA, doesn't put all the data on Ethereum, uses a data availability committee, and that's been very successful. And that's something else which exists on the Arbitrum, or in the Arbitrum Orbit ecosystem. And actually, just today, an announcement came out in the Arbitrum Orbit space where you can now do customized gas tokens. So you can basically go ahead and say, hey, I want the fee token here to be, whatever token I want it to be. It doesn't have to be ETH. If you're not using alternative DA, that doesn't always make that much sense because you're paying so much in Ethereum L1 fees than ETH. So you might as well collect it in ETH. Otherwise, you're sort of just, you need to constantly just, sell them to get the ETH because you need ETH. But when you're talking about alternative DA, your ETH costs go down and are fixed generally per block. And you can actually now do things like, okay, change the fee token because your fees in Ethereum are much more predictable and even steady. So we have something we published for Orbit Chains is this launch tool where you can go ahead and just toggle, now the custom fee tokens is launched in there as well. Toggle different customizations, sort of customizations that people have expressed that they want, the more popular ones. But the cool thing with Orbit is you can go ahead and make whatever changes you want. And that's for Orbit layer 3s, which you mentioned. There are a lot of benefits to layer 3s over layer 2. I'll tell you what two of them are. Number one is just the lower onboarding costs, right? So if you are, say, have your funds in Coinbase or Binance or some other exchange, and you want to get them onto your chain. If it's a layer 2, you're going to have to go to Ethereum first, and then from Ethereum to that chain. If it's a layer 3, you're going to actually be able to go directly from Arbitrum to that chain, and you'll benefit from the 90-95% or so cheaper fees on the Arbitrum network than those Ethereum transfers, and the cost of onboarding users is going to be a lot lower. Also, the cost of just posting data to Ethereum, particularly when you don't have high transaction volume. For layer 2s, you constantly need to hit Ethereum. For layer 3s, you can sort of take the bus. So rather than going to Ethereum directly, you get on the Arbitrum bus, you're packaged together with all these other transactions. And even if you have only 1 or 2 transactions to contribute, that's something which is something which is totally fine, and you'll only pay for the space you used. And the last really crucial feature, I think, of Arbitrum as it relates to Orbit is, to be honest, every chain has dreams of becoming like uber successful very early on and having a ton of transactions. It doesn't always happen. Sometimes there's just a bootstrapping phase, right? Where like, okay, you have to, and your transactions might be spotty. You might go for periods of time without transactions. One of the things that differentiates the Arbitrum Orbit technology from its competitors is the block time is completely elastic. What I mean by that is, if you have a lot of transactions coming through, it will do up to 4 blocks per second, the fastest of any L2 that I'm aware of. If you have like 20 minutes without any transactions, there will be no block. So you're not paying fees of empty blocks to Ethereum. And that's something which, when you're calculating your costs, if you're in like one of, our competitors Rollup, where they have fixed blocks, so every 2 seconds you have to pay these costs for an empty block. It doesn't matter if you have users or not, you have these fixed costs that are very high, whereas with Arbitrum Orbit, it sort of scales with your users. And that's something which I think is important. I will mention though, there are Orbit L2s as well. So Orbit L3s are definitely the more popular option. There are Orbit L2s as well. And I know there's an ongoing conversation with the DAO on this in terms of licensing models for layer 2s. Layer 3 is completely open and permissionless. Layer 2s is, the DAO currently controls, but I think there are ongoing conversations on how to make that experience more smooth. And I'm definitely following those conversations, closely from our perspective. But yeah, probably gave you a lot more than you bargained for in that answer, certainly the technical details, but I'll round it out with saying, there are, when I spoke with the team last week, they told me they showed me about 50 plus chains in development. A few dozen or so have already announced publicly. Maybe 1 or 2 dozen have announced publicly, and that information is on our on our blog. But we're actually working on adding Orbit chains to the Arbitrum portal as well, so you can now track these in live, and there are just literally a proliferation of these coming live. And I know some alpha, which is I know of some high-profile chain launches happening between now and the middle of February. So we're going to see some really exciting things that I'm aware of coming in the ecosystem.
Nice. On that note, people keep asking me about this because I've been tweeting so much recently, like a little airdrop fanboy about Tia stakers and Atom stakers and this and that. And if you don't want to comment, that's fine. But people have been asking me quite a bit about Arbitrum staking, right? And then the thought about, okay, well, if there's all these Orbit chains coming out live, launching tokens, how do they get the best way? How do they get the Arbitrum community involved the best? Well, they could airdrop or they could reserve tokens for ARB holders or ARB stakers but wait, ARB staking. And I know Plutus is trying to figure out their ARB staking. So like ARB staking, like when is it like possible? Is it a DAO thing? Is it a technical thing? Like when? WEN.
Yeah, so that's definitely not, that's definitely in the DAO's realm. Not in, and I know there's been a very active conversation happening there, as you referenced, and a lot of different voices there. I'll say something technical on this point, which is rollups and proof of stake chains are very different in the way that their technology works. So a proof of stake chain, basically, it's a voting protocol, basically. And you need the stake is sort of helpful to secure the chain because you have different people sort of voting with their stake. There are slashing conditions where the chain is actually like providing real economic security to the chain. And this is true, in just about every proof of stake protocol that I'm aware of. And that's where sort of most people, when they think of staking, think of that. In rollups, it's a little bit different. The key feature of rollups is actually they don't have their own consensus. They don't need to have their own proof of work or proof of stake. They rely on Ethereum's consensus. So they do have consensus, but that consensus is, the API for that consensus is a smart contract on Ethereum, right? Interestingly, we talk about rollup validators. Rollup validators don't talk to one another. All they need to do is watch Ethereum and say, is what's happening on Ethereum a correct representation of what's happening on the rollup? If it is, we're good. If it's not, they engage in the fraud-proof process and they fix that. But interestingly, they're not actually trying to reach consensus with one another. Well, they are, but via Ethereum as the consensus vehicle. So it's a little bit of a different technological landscape. And the question then, the technical question, which I think is a very interesting one, which I'll pose, is there a mechanism where staking provides economic security for rollups, where it, in a similar way that it can provide economic security for a proof of stake chain? I think it's a fantastically interesting technical research question, and one which I don't know the answer to. I have some ideas, but I I haven't done the full amount of work to actually have, I don't have like a paper written up on this or anything like that.
Yeah,
and I think that's
no
something
worries.
which I think is a very interesting technical question. So not exactly the answer to the question you asked, but hopefully
No, it's
some good technical.
I mean, the token itself solves the something for nothing problem of the rollups, right? Like there has to be value on the rollup for people to care, for distribution, for marketing, for community. But yeah, staking doesn't really apply in the same sense as you explained. So yeah, Rob, you got.
Well, yeah, Steven, what you say about proof of stake makes sense. Like any kind of staking mechanism would not be at the protocol level. It would be at the application level on top. And yeah, I do. I mean, I have so many questions that I'm trying to formulate.
No, that's the research question. Maybe not.
I don't know.
Looks like
Okay.
we
I
got some research to do.
Research question.
Okay, cool. I mean, yeah, I have so many questions. I'm trying to pull them all into one because I realize we're running a bit low on time. So like the main crux of my problem is like, as a STIP maxi, like what went right with STIPs and what went wrong with STIPs, and try to improve that for future incentive programs. You mentioned like incentive allocation, and there are certain areas where incentives could be allocated to kind of boost those areas. I heard you mention kind of like the onboarding normies and Arbitrum layer 3s let that happen a little bit easier by transforming gas costs and the directness of the onboarding. And then also some of the other sectors aside from DeFi that are getting a little bit less love, but could flourish on Arbitrum. So with that being said, whether it's onboarding normies, like if you were to look at STIP, and I think personally that was like one of the light bulb moments because it got so much attention and generated so much traction. What went right with STIP? And then if you were to do like a STIP round 2, like how would you reshape some of the allocation of those incentives so that there was more incentives flowing into the areas that could really benefit from it and benefit Arbitrum and Ethereum overall by incentivizing those portions of the ecosystem?
Yeah, so it's a great question. I don't, from my focus and my vantage point, I focus much more on the technology, and so I don't have specific comments on allocation or how the community think about it. I think the process was a great one. I think the process of seeing so many different voices come together was absolutely wonderful, and that's really made me excited about the engagement of the Arbitrum ecosystem, and that there are people that just care and have strong opinions. Whether those opinions are my opinions or not, I think is not relevant. The community needs to figure out what it wants to, what and how it wants to support. But I think it's the thing that makes me excited is the community understands its role, and that's the most exciting thing here. So if you look back, I'm sure if this probably goes true across the line, or if everyone that argued for something looks back, they probably change something. In hindsight, you always will. I think that's the community's continued role, which is to go ahead and take the input and not just do it once and then never look back and do it again, because then you're just going to do the same process. But say, hey, what was helpful for the ecosystem, what was not helpful for the ecosystem. I think having, you know, obviously different objectives. What does helpful for the ecosystem mean? Obviously getting, you know, strongly supported apps in the ecosystem is important, but also continuing to build the core technology. That might be other nodes and service providers that want to launch in the ecosystem, and working with them as well. And ultimately creating this network that has, you know, it already has the best core technology, but the best application level technology, the best service technology, the best user experience. You know, I think we've, as just a general directional thought of where we can improve, and, you know, maybe that's helpful, maybe that's not. I think scaling at this point is not the number one issue that we have. We are, by the way, at Offchain Labs, continue to do more work on scale, right? So you always have to think ahead of time. You know, we're working on something called Arbitrum Stylus, which has the ability to provide another, you know, 10x computational scale, 100x memory scale. These are like large numbers, and you can view scale in two ways, by the way. You can view it as a reduction in gas costs. You can view it as an increase in capacity, and those two things are both can both be true, and are really important to in an ecosystem where you believe the demand is increasing. But I would say at the current moment, user experience is also very probably at the forefront, which is how do you just increase and make the user experience great. Two questions to ask there are, you know, well, I should say Arbitrum is doing, I think, really well there. Block times are really fast, which is important for people. The chain generally is reliable, and you know, the technology works. It's fully built out. So the user experience and the security like trade-off are, I think, are really at a really good place. But not being complacent, like how do we build the user experience? How do you make it more easy to access? How do you make it access? You know, particularly as you talk about new verticals like gaming or real world assets or SocialFi, you're trying to appeal to a wider user base here that is not necessarily the users that use Arbitrum today or use Ethereum today or use any blockchain today, and they might not have the same skill sets. And in order to take a sort of important and well-adopted technology, but in a more limited circles today, and take that to really worldwide global adoption, I think the big bottleneck is going to be UX. And so the questions I think we can ask are, how do we improve the UX? And this can be on the application basis, you know, on the app layer. This can be on the protocol layer. I don't know, but that's one important direction I think where we as developers need to think about, and maybe there is something for the community to also consider there as well. Basically also what can we learn from other ecosystems? Are there other ecosystems that are doing things well when it comes to onboarding users, making this easy? How can we replicate that in the Arbitrum ecosystem as well?
Awesome. That makes sense as far as incentive allocations. I think it is an interesting question just related to the ARB staking question, which is like at a certain point, cryptography becomes crypto economics, because that's how we derive consensus and coordination across these chains. So it is like very, very cool to see how the ARB DAO allocates those incentives and then reinforces some of the areas that are particularly core to the Arbitrum ecosystem. And there was a question that was posed by one of our community members, which was that if ZK technology kind of like proved like more efficient, apparently you had said that Arbitrum would transition to like a ZK rollup if the research became like so supportive of that technology. And I found that quite curious. Like, is that true that there is possibility? And essentially my question is like, what would ZK technology have to look like for Arbitrum to make that kind of switch?
Good question. So one point of clarification is the only thing I control is what I work on. And well, that's not true. What Offchain Labs works on, right? And what I mean by that is we can build technology and we can, you know, based on certain metrics, change or not change our direction. But that's the really cool thing, you know, bringing it back to where we started here. The DAO is the one that actually has the keys of what gets launched on chain. So if I become a ZK maxi tomorrow, that doesn't mean that Arbitrum will ever become a ZK chain, because I don't have, you know, any keys to the chain at all. I'm not on the security council. I'm not like literally, I don't have, you know, that has to go through the process of the Arbitrum DAO and the Arbitrum deciding what is the future of the chain. And similarly, by the way, if some ZK builder out there comes ahead and I have no idea anything about it and says, hey, we think that the Arbitrum chain should move over to ZK technology, and they propose some technical upgrade to the chain, that can go through, whether or not, I or Offchain Labs agree with it. I think that's important to mention. That being said, I can talk about our focus at Offchain Labs and what we believe and what we're building. So Offchain Labs, just focusing on the name for a second, is different from most of our competitors. We are Offchain Labs. The thing you won't see in our name is the word optimistic, the word ZK, the word snark, the word stark, or anything that really speaks to a particular technology. And it seems like a strange point to make, maybe, but it's actually important, because when it comes to our mission and our vision, our mission is to scale Ethereum with the best technology available, to give users, Ethereum security with great usability, and use the best tools available to do that today. Our mission is not to take optimistic rollups and scale Ethereum, right? That is what we're doing, because we believe, and I believe, that optimistic rollup technology is the best technology available today to do that on a few planes, when it comes to maturity, when it comes to cost, when it comes to security, and particularly as it's deployed today, and when it comes to flexibility, the ability to do things like Arbitrum Stylus and really innovate and add things, EVM plus, add other languages to this software. I think the Arbitrum Nitro stack is the best, not optimistic rollup stack, is the best rollup stack today. But that's not hard coded, right? And to go back in time, I mentioned earlier that Arbitrum started off with a paper. One of the key points of our paper, probably the thing that got it published, and Used Security is a top conference for academic security papers. Probably one of the things that led to its publication was something called the AVM, or the Arbitrum Virtual Machine. It was a really interesting design from a research perspective. And in fact, an Arbitrum launch in 2021, in August of 2021, to the public, used this, what we call now Arbitrum Classic. It had the AVM in there. Fast forward a year later, Arbitrum Nitro replaced the AVM with WebAssembly WASM, an off-the-shelf VM, and we were able to take WASM, build a prover for it, and build all the rollup using other technology, sort of more standard technology, not something we built. And we also replaced the custom-built Arbitrum node with Geth, so Ethereum's Go Ethereum node. And you might say to yourself, or had our company mission been a little bit different, right? You might say, like, that must have been super difficult for you, right? You took your prized possession here, the AVM, which Ed, Harry, and I, literally, not an exaggeration, spent years of our life designing this. And it was really cool. And it is really cool. And I'm sure that there are other research papers today that are building on this design, whether they have applications or not, because, in the realm of scientific knowledge, an extremely innovative and interesting design, and it proved actually to be very useful for some time. But as soon as we realized that we had a better approach, we being us at Offchain Labs, with Nitro, that didn't use this, we were happy to throw that out. We were happy to say, I'm not connected to that. My mission is not to scale Ethereum with the AVM. My mission is to scale Ethereum with the best technology available. And hey, look, we built something better. Cool. And something better is actually off the shelf, tech that's not used. We did a lot to make it work in a rollup. There's a ton of work there. And Arbitrum is the only chain that actually has those technical pieces live today. Like, that's amazing. And I am super happy to put the AVM, to retire the AVM. And that's great. And I'll say that similar thing could happen in theory with ZK technology, if ZK technology gets to a point where I think it's competitive with optimistic rollup technology. To be very clear, I don't think that's the case today. I'm not convinced that will be the case ever, but I don't know. And I haven't bet my company on it, and I don't need to, because our mission is not connected to that, right? If a plumber came to your house and said, hey, I'm going to fix a leak with this tool, you might say to them, do you want to take a look at the leak first? Like, I don't know. Or if they said, hey, and if I come back in a year, I'm still going to use this tool, right? That's like, why don't we take a look at the problem and solve the problem and find the best tool available? And that's the approach that we take at Offchain Labs. We look at the problem and find the best tool available. And what I can tell you is that if we fast forward 5 years from now, almost certainly the same way we retired the AVM, The same way that in the ZK world, there are constant innovations where they're moving to better proof systems. If you go back like 5 years ago and look what Zcash launched on, with Growth 16, like there's many innovations and new protocols and better protocols objectively than those exist today. So I can tell you, in 5 years from now, we as a community, particularly with all the smart people coming into our community every day and all the, just research time and smart people coming in, you're going to have better technology than we have today. I mean, I'd be shocked if we didn't. We'd be wasting our time if we didn't. If we were not at the final point. If someone once said to me, "Is Arbitrum technology complete?" and I turned back to them and said, "Is Ethereum technology complete?" Like, is none of this is complete, right? Where there's constant innovation and making things better over time. You have to figure out how to do that without breaking things, and you have constraints. But that, so certainly in 5 years from now will be better. But if you say to me, okay, what will be better? I don't know. Will we be using ZK? Maybe. Will we be using something else? Maybe. Will we have made optimistic rollups much better with stylists and innovations and the like there? Yes, and maybe that will be the path we continue on even past stylists. I can't tell you for sure, but I can tell you that I probably personally won't be advocating for the same exact technology stack today. In 5 years from now, I'd be shocked if I were. But I also haven't taken a bet on what the future is. So if it's ZK, that's awesome. If it's something else, that's great too. Am I convinced that it's ZK? No. If it turns out that there are a few breakthroughs in ZK, which I think will be necessary to for it to be competitive, will I eat my words? No. That's great. And we're happy to support the best technology available today. Today, that's indisputably Arbitrum Nitro. And the future will bring what the future brings. And I think one of the importance of upgradability, as we talk to the DAOs role, is for it to decide what is the best technology, and for it to make sure that it is constantly on the path of the best technology when it considers security, along with scalability, usability, flexibility, maturity, and all these other verticals.
Yeah.
So then, just to play a little devil's advocate with you, then, if you are a believer in alternative data availability solutions, giving a better UX, cheaper fees, better overall experience for users, I guess A, why is Arbitrum still posting data to Ethereum? And then B, what is untrue about the first statement about data availability outside of Ethereum being better than posting to Ethereum? Is it just security? Yeah.
I don't think so. I don't think there's a better or worse here. I think that there are different applications. There's a spectrum. Different applications require different technological tools, and some are suited better for some, and some are for others. So there's no question that posting the data on Ethereum is the ultimate thing you can do for security, and that's the case. And there's also but let me actually go back and tell you about Arbitrum Nova and sort of how that came about and where it came about to, right? So we could stay like firm on our values and our beliefs and say, hey, the fact is that posting all the data to Ethereum is the best from a security perspective, and we should always do that. But what we saw happening, literally in the market, what we saw happening, this goes back a few years, is projects weren't coming and saying, okay, take a games or social applications weren't saying, okay, well, Steven says that the best thing to do is post data on Ethereum, so we're going to do that. They were saying, well, that's really nice, but I can't launch my application with these fees, because even a 10-cent fee or a 5-cent fee, if you're posting this fee every time you do a move in a game, that's just too expensive for me. I can't do that. So it wasn't the case that people were coming and saying, like, you have to be pragmatic as well. So what were people doing? They were going to alternative layer ones that were offering much cheaper fees, with much lower security. And so the question that we asked ourselves is, from the Ethereum maxi perspective, because we believe very much in Ethereum, is there something we can offer these people that will meet their pragmatic approach and also offer them, a large degree of the security of Ethereum? Not necessarily like the full security of a rollup, but something that is better than the security they're going to get, and also something that will meet their objectives. Because if we stood, just firm on our values and didn't think about, the pragmatic parts at all, we just say, okay, this is all we're offering, they're just going to go and get something that's strictly worse in every from every criteria. So that's where that came from. And to apply that thinking, I will tell you, I'm not going to tell you that a roll-up is not the ultimate security, but I'll also tell you that there is a place for alternative data availability. There's absolutely a place for this, because applications aren't deciding between putting everything on Ethereum or not. They're saying, well, I'm a game. So if my transaction cost this much, I just might as well not exist. So either it's like shutting down or making a compromise. And we say, can we give you a better compromise to make? And that's why this spectrum exists. So I don't think alternative DA is good or bad. I think it's good for some or bad for some. But if you take like a DeFi application and currently in Arbitrum 1, your couple cent fee is actually fine for most users and most applications, even for, relatively small trades. If you're trading $10 and your fee is a couple of cents, it's still okay, right? So is there room to go? Maybe if you're trying to trade $1 or trade 10 cents, yes. And maybe for, ultra small chains, you'll need to find other, relatively small trades. You'll need to find other solutions that can, best serve those. But I think it has to be a decision that understands the application and also understands all the alternatives, right? So we're not helping anyone if we stand firm in our values and say this is the best and we won't offer anything else, because they're not saying, okay, fine, we're going to launch there. They're going to go elsewhere and have a worse security experience and potentially leave the Ethereum ecosystem. And I don't think that anyone is well served from that.
Yeah, that was the thing, right? It was like, is the ethos of Ethereum and the alignment going to get in the way of your agnostic approach towards delivering the best products? And also, like, is the ethos of Ethereum going to keep you in check when it comes to the shiny new DA or the shiny new VM, right? And so it's kind of a double-edged situation.
To be clear, like, if I didn't think Ethereum could offer them anything, then we wouldn't, we just say, okay, Ethereum can't help you. It's not like we're trying, but I believe that Arbitrum Nova, for example, can offer you a much better security guarantee than some of the alternatives that we're using. Leverage Ethereum, even if it's not leveraging Ethereum the exact same way to the exact same extent that rollups are, Ethereum still has a lot to offer you. So the question is, can Ethereum offer these applications something as well? But absolutely, if the answer to that was no, then it's like, okay, so then we're not going to compromise on Ethereum's value, but here we have something that Ethereum can legitimately offer them to improve their experience and security. And I think that the correct thing to do is to offer that, but also make the trade-offs clear. When it comes to DA, by the way, I think that the important task at hand for us is to help users understand the trade-offs, right? So it's not, it's not like Arbitrum, AnyTrust, or on-chain now there's a host of different DA services. There's like Celestia, EigenDA, Espresso, et cetera. There are lots of different DA options. And I think one thing that we as a community need to do is just give developers the understanding of where do some succeed where others don't, or better, like, which is best for my application, right? It doesn't mean any is good or any is bad. It means they all have a different use case, and where will we succeed? What is best for what we want to do, and where is the rubric that we can make our decision for? That's something which I think sometimes the narrative gets in the way. Everyone just wants to promote theirs, but helping you promote yours for your users, for the users that it best serves, is a thing I think we need to do. Otherwise, we'll just have lots of confusion.
Yeah, and I think Rob's jumping from the guns too, but I just have one last thing that you tweeted. It was scroll is Ethereum, ZK Sync is Ethereum, Arbitrum is Ethereum, Optimism is Ethereum. All these different rollups are Ethereum, and you definitely got some backlash from like some Avalanche folks and some other folks. So I guess a week or so after that tweet, which went totally viral, like, any thoughts on where the community might be a little bit misled, or the point that you're trying to drive home, or thoughts on some of the backlash which you received? I just want to have our community understand where you're coming from your perspective, and also perhaps understand some of the counterpoints which sometimes were a little bit angrily brought up, but such is the way of crypto Twitter.
Absolutely. So my point there, which I believe firmly, is that the rollup centric roadmap is Ethereum. That is Ethereum's roadmap. That's the rollup that's the roadmap that Vitalik sent in 2020, and we've executed on it to a T. And this was not the roadmap for a roadmap that Vitalik had for some system that wasn't Ethereum. This was literally the vision for Ethereum. How do we tailor Ethereum to become this roll-up centric ecosystem, and we're seeing that ecosystem succeed. And if you actually look to some of the things that Vitalik said in that post, it was like, it's some of the criticism that people have, right? So some people will come and say, well, these aren't Ethereum because they have their own token. Well, that's actually right there in the post. It says that these should have their own token. These people say, no, it's not Ethereum because their MEV doesn't all flow to, because chains could monetize MEV in ways doesn't all flow to ETH. That's actually also right there in the post. And Vitalik talks about funding the ecosystem and funding public goods in ways that the Ethereum Foundation can't fund things. And another actually really interesting thing that he speaks about in the post in this 2020 roadmap is this. He says something like, and I'm going to paraphrase here, so go ahead and read it so I don't misquote, but the idea that I understood is people like having their own little island that they can fight for and they can defend, and expanding the Ethereum ecosystem to give people sort of the ability to be very passionate about their project is actually a feature. And if you look back at all the criticism that people have, it's literally in all three of these. So people say, right, no, it can't be Ethereum because it has its own token. It can't be Ethereum because it has MEV capture. It can't be Ethereum because, hey, you guys fight all day about other things. It's like, no, that's actually what Ethereum is and what Ethereum has become. Ethereum is the roll-up centric roadmap. It has so many builders, so many more than any other ecosystem. So of course, there's some dissent and fighting, and people are passionate about what they're doing. And hey, that's what makes this work, and that's what makes people excited to go ahead and try to move Ethereum in their direction. But to say that this isn't Ethereum is I think just disingenuous. And and the point to me pointing back to the roadmap is, it's not like, oh, we're looking back, it's 2024 now. It's like, oh, look where we ended up. Let's create some narrative that makes this look like Ethereum. It's like, no. There were architectural plans. We followed those architectural plans and we did it. You can disagree with those plans. So I have no issue, with, I think the Ethereum's roll-up centric roadmap is a good one that allows you to both scale and have security at the same time. And I will fight, anyone who wants to fight this, but I don't think there's anything wrong with someone else disagreeing and saying, hey, I don't think this was a good roadmap. Like, you can say that, but to go ahead and say, you guys are just sort of trying to backfill what you did into Ethereum, this is not Ethereum. It's like, that's not true. This is literally what Ethereum tried to be and succeeded at being at a time when most of these projects that I mentioned in that tweet didn't even exist yet. It set out a roadmap that's called for their existence. I think it's disingenuous for others to say that this is somehow not Ethereum. And some of the takes were like, well, if Vitalik doesn't get to say what Ethereum is. It's like, well, he kind of does. When it was 2020 and he was, he with community support set this roadmap. If who does get this? Some Alt L1 founder that disagrees, they get to decide what Ethereum is. So I very much stand by the take. The dissent was interesting, which again made me go back and reread this and really find that how robust this was. And I think we're going to continue building on this roadmap, continue building Ethereum. That's what we're doing.
You got Andy howling over there about who decides what Ethereum is. Steven, I got one last question, because this has been an absolutely banger podcast, and this is one that we ask everyone who comes on. It's a pretty easy one, so I think we're through most of the technical weeds here. So if you were to essentially like run into someone in an elevator and give them an elevator pitch on Arbitrum, Ethereum, your vision for the entire Web3 world, like, who would you choose to be stuck in an elevator with, and why?
That's a great question. Probably I think the place where we as an ecosystem can really benefit most from adoption, and we're seeing a lot of it happen today, but more so is when it comes to like, I would say, mainstream tech companies. Some of them embraced us a little bit. Some of them embrace the blockchain vision, but just tried to create their own little version of it in their own little world that doesn't really connect to Ethereum. I would say that enterprise leadership, so think like like FANG companies or the like, and really embrace them on the Ethereum vision. And I'll sort of end with one thought on that, which is, there was a time, if you go back 5 or 6 years ago, where people very much thought as like Web3 and Web2 as completely replacements for one another, or Web3, I should say, as a replacer for Web2. So an early thought of social on the blockchain might have been said, hey, let's just take Reddit and put all its data on Ethereum. Boom, we've just moved Ethereum Reddit to Web3. That's awesome. This is probably where I'm sure if you've been in the space long enough, you've heard someone pitch you on putting all your medical records on the blockchain. I think that's a terrible idea. But again, there was a lot of these thoughts, which is let's just take things that are on the internet and put them on Ethereum. And that to me is like very not exciting at all. The things that are exciting to me is how can we make the internet more decentralized and take some of the components of Web3 and integrate them with our Web2 experiences, so you come up with a new differentiated experience. That doesn't mean that we don't need data centers. Doesn't mean that we don't need a localized CDN. There's a lot of efficiencies, certainly in places where security is not critical, to the level of security is critical, maybe, but not to the level of decentralized security is not critical, that there are a lot of efficiencies come there. So how can these two technologies marry each other? What you end up is with Web3, an internet that's has decentralization and security where it matters. But there's also an understanding of there are places where the efficiency actually makes a lot more sense. And from a cost perspective, just from a timing perspective, from being able to serve content perspective. And those are the places where I see. So if I was in that elevator making a pitch to, one of these folks, it wouldn't be like, hey, let's move Google search onto Ethereum, so every search query now is a transaction on Ethereum. Obviously, that seems funny now, and it's an exaggeration of what people are saying, to be clear. But it would be like, hey, there are some really, really good places. And by the way, Google's an example where they are actually very doing a lot, particularly in Google Cloud, and doing a lot. Integrating with different blockchains, including Arbitrum. So I'm not saying that this isn't happening there, but those are the places where I think we can see more and more mainstream, not wholesale adoption of what we're doing, but integrations into their core products in ways that the sum of the parts is just, the whole is greater than the sum of the parts.
For the sake of my L1 transactions, please do not bring Google's searches on chain.
We're in agreement there.
But I think that you're right. You take away that not to just hate on the Bitcoin maxis, man, but some of them have this idea of you just burn it all down to rebuild it. Whereas I think Ethereum's kind of got this more of like this idealistic everyman approach where it's like welcoming open arms, where you see fit, ways that we can optimize, disrupt, but not displace necessarily, or there's no sense in trying to get tech adoption by telling somebody or a company that we're trying to come for your market. It's like, no, let's just collaborate together and make it a bigger market or a better product or tech, right? So, yeah. Absolutely.
I think we made a lot of progress as an ecosystem here. And even when I speak to enterprise leaders that could be in the financial sector, but others as well, there's a deep understanding and appreciation of what Ethereum is doing, and look for these gems where integrating just makes sense, make things more efficient for everyone involved. And I think we've come, and that's true in gaming too, right? It's really true, and we've come so far on all these verticals. And I think that a lot of that's happening today. So what I said is probably obvious to most people today, probably simple. There definitely was a time, which I remember this wasn't the case, but I think we've made a ton of progress as a community there.
Is that an Arbitrum yarmulke you have on?
It is.
No way. Rob was telling me about that. Steven,
Absolutely.
Thanks, man. Thanks for coming on.
My pleasure. Great to be here.
Yeah, good to meet for the first time, and great podcast. And yeah, thanks for the good questions, Rob, and good answers, Steve. And yeah, excited to see the future of Arbitrum.
Likewise. Thank you.